Why did Odysseus cross the Mediterranean Sea? Well, when there's a will, there's Anne Hathaway. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we are reviewing The Odyssey, written and directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, Zendaya, Charlize Theron, Elliot Page, Samantha Morton, Jon Bernthal, Himesh Patel, Corey Hawkins, Mia Goth, Josh Stewart, Benny Safdie, Logan Marshall Green, Ryan Hurst, and of course John Leguizamo. That's a lot of names. This movie follows the aftermath of the Trojan War as Odysseus embarks on his long voyage home as he faces various trials and tribulations after offending the gods. And I'll of course be getting into spoilers for The Odyssey, so if you haven't had a chance to watch it just yet, what are you doing? Go watch it, come back, and let's get into the movie.
We won the war. Help me go home.
Alright, so as somebody who went through the American public school system, I unfortunately was taught more about Percy Jackson than Homer's original poems between the Iliad and the Odyssey. So I found myself in a unique position to go into Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey as blind as one could possibly go, aside from the knowledge I procured over the general cultural zeitgeist around this story. And of course I have seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which was my previous favorite adaptation of The Odyssey. But Nolan's adaptation of this story truly has it all. Epic scope, tremendous performances, set pieces truly crafted through movie magic, brilliant cinematography, probably another award-winning score from Ludwig Göransson, Matt Damon getting lost, and of course, enough needless controversy to keep film bros busy till the next Rachel Zegler movie. So let's break down this movie from a filmmaking perspective, starting with the most obvious aspect of this film to praise, being the technical side of The Odyssey. This is the first feature film to be shot entirely through IMAX cameras, and I was lucky enough to get a ticket to a 7mm IMAX screen. Thanks again to my friend who got it for me. And if you are near one of these theaters and manage to find an open seat, you will not be disappointed, although any IMAX screen or premium format will look just as good. Hoyt van Hoytema's cinematography really stood out in the sense that he was able to use and move around this massive camera in ways that make you forget that he's using a 300-pound camera. Yeah, sure, the sweeping on-location landscape shots are gorgeous. The impressive sets for the Cyclops' cave or Ithaca or Troy look incredible in the wide cinematic shots, but it was the handheld shots or the chaotic open sea sequences that really stood out to me, along with its use in the smaller, more intimate dialogue sequences with incredibly shallow focus. And Nolan's intent on filming as much as he possibly can in camera led to some really breathtaking sequences. The first big sequence, of course, being the Cyclops sequence that really blew me away and was the thing that I was most intrigued to see coming out of the trailers. The mix of practical costumes, miniatures, 2-scale puppetry, compositing, and of course some truly hard to place hidden CGI made this sequence truly breathtaking. And the Cyclops was genuinely terrifying, in large part due to the sound design, although since this is a Nolan movie, the sound mix is for sure a bit weird at times. And to take a brief aside, I have watched this movie twice, once in standard IMAX theater and the second time at a 7mm IMAX theater, and for some reason the sound mix with the dialogue was fine during the standard IMAX, but was so much harder to hear during the 70mm screening that I went to, so not entirely sure why. I don't want to knock the movie too much because of this, mainly because, you know, I didn't really have troubles the first time I watched it, but maybe it's just the theater that I went to. But in general, this is a loud movie, and during sequences like this one, the sound adds to the epic nature of the film. And we keep on getting little hints from Nolan when it comes to horror elements inside of his films, with this and this Circe sequence really diving into the genre. Maybe it's because I knew absolutely nothing about the Circe sequence going in, but I think of everything, this was my favorite sequence inside of the film. Very much a live-action version of Spirited Away. Or maybe Spirited Away is the animated version of The Odyssey. The transformation of Odysseus' crew into pigs has some really solid body horror, very reminiscent of An American Werewolf in London, which if you haven't seen that movie, go check it out, one of my favorite werewolf transformations of all time. And honestly, I truly have no idea how much of this was practical versus digital elements. Definitely one of those sequences that make you wonder how in the world they were able to pull it off. Some of the other trials Odysseus faces on his journey home aren't as large scale as those two, but were all still very well done. Ludwig's score during the Siren song was haunting, the whirlpool/six-headed monster scene was visually visually striking, and Helios's cattle led to a nail-biting sequence on the sea that was just so intense. And of course a lot of other stops that Odysseus makes along the way, but I'll get into more of those as we get into the characters that they tied directly into, because Nolan of course has assembled a large ensemble of incredible actors to talk about. Matt Damon of course plays Odysseus, and although his performance here isn't super distinct from some of his past roles, I do think his performance here evolves very well with the arc his character goes on. I think the further this movie progresses, the better he gets. Odysseus is a very complicated hero figure. On the surface level, he is a hero of Troy who tricked his way into winning the war. Yeah, sure, his main goal in this story is to make it home, but not before he faces all the consequences of his actions in offending and defying the gods. Another sequence that I have to praise is of course the sack of Troy. The entire Trojan horse sequence was of course shown as a prologue last December, which is exactly as is in the film itself. Great staging, direction, and very successful in building tension. But its use in this film, especially with how it's structured, was one of my favorite parts. You hear the legend of the Trojan horse through Travis Scott's intro, you see as Jon Bernthal's character tells the story from the inside, but it's not until the end where you get Odysseus' side of the story that makes it so much more tragic. And I'm not entirely sure how it goes down inside of the poem, let me know in the comment section down below if you do know, but I absolutely love how Odysseus explaining the horrors of what he witnessed to Penelope recontextualizes everything we had seen up until this point. A large theme of Homer's poem are the consequences to one's actions, the consequences he faces when offending the gods or trying to defy their will. And here, it is expressed greatly in making Odysseus really feel the consequences of all the death and suffering that occurred when 10 years of rage was unleashed upon the people of Troy, and how his deceit in gifting a peace offering in the name of Athena resulted in the death of a woman played by Zendaya, whom Athena takes the form of when guiding Odysseus through his journey home. This monologue from Matt Damon was easily the most emotional highlight of the film for me, alongside pretty much every single thing that Anne Hathaway did in this movie. Someone please get her an Oscar, or at least a nomination, for her monologue to Telemachus. Please. And I also loved where these characters ended their arcs. Odysseus and Penelope leaving their life as a king, general, and queen to chase the escaping son in exile, leaving Telemachus to rule in their stead. Great ending. Adding on to the deception with the Trojan horse, let's get into Elliot Page's role here as Sinon, as his role here was deceptively small at first before becoming one of the film's most important roles. In a very brief moment at the beginning of the film, you see Sinon take the place of ANTINOUS when being selected to fight Agamemnon's war. He is promised that his family will get riches in doing so. With ANTINOUS being the coward that he is, he lies about being the one who initiated the trade, doesn't live up to his word in helping Sinon's family, and is the main suitor vying for the throne by the end of the film. This guy. Sinon then goes on to be the soldier left behind with the Trojan horse, truly believing that it is a peace offering, unlike the poem in which he is intentionally deceptive to the Trojans. This gives Sinon much more reason to antagonize Odysseus when he visits Hades, as he died dishonorably and only found out through his family, who also died as a result of lies and deception. There is a ton of online chatter about Elliot's role here as a replacement of sorts to Achilles, or for a time people were just upset about a trans man potentially being the actor to play Achilles, along with so much more pointless controversy, but at its core, this is indeed a change from the poem that I do find interesting, for better or for worse. For this particular adaptation story, I think that Sinon's impact is great, leading to some of the most satisfying moments in Odysseus returning ANTINOUS' shame at the end of the film, and Elliot's performance in Hades was fantastic. But of course, people love the character of Achilles, where Sinon is simply not in Homer's telling of the Odyssey. So where I do believe that purists have a reason to question changes to the story, I think that Nolan's adaptation here has ample reason in tying Sinon to the dead, who speaks some sense back into Odysseus, who at this point in the story has entirely lost his way. And yes, using a character integral to Odysseus' main deception against Athena is way better than the alternative, where we would get one scene with Achilles played by Brad Pitt in a Marvel-esque cameo. Definitely wouldn't want that. The story is also broken up between the story of Odysseus and the story of his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, who is also very good in this movie. And I had the same concern when it comes to Oppenheimer, where these Nolan movies have such recognizable actors in these integral roles, where I was worried about being distracted by Tom Holland, the actor, rather than seeing the character he plays. And I'm very happy to say that this is very much not the case here. Telemachus' coming-of-age story as the heir to the throne really worked for me, especially with his foil being played by the always great Robert Pattinson as ANTINOUS. And I've never seen a bigger coward than ANTINOUS in a movie. Well, actually there is Bear from Obsession, so I guess ANTINOUS will get a very close second place.
No, don't do that!
but his constant conniving in the background without actually getting in on the action was killing me the entire runtime. When these swords dropped into the final fight and he would just yell, use the swords, and well, you know, going in and using the swords, it just made me laugh every single time. And he did it for everything. He did it for the shield, he did it for the spear, he did it for the swords. It was just so funny to me. And Odysseus ends up taking him out in the most satisfying way, with him really putting up no fight whatsoever. And speaking of that last fight, my god, the choreography was insane. This is exactly what I meant when I mentioned before that I forgot this film was shot using a 300-pound camera. Very satisfying to see all these suitors fail at stringing Odysseus' bow before he aura farms to the max by getting it with ease before killing Corey Hawkins' character on the spot. My audience cheered at many moments that didn't quite make sense during this film, but this moment in particular was very much worthy of that applause. John Leguizamo was another major standout here as a mentor of sorts to Telemachus, not to be confused with Ryan Hurst's character Mentor, who also acts as a mentor to Telemachus. One element that I definitely knew from the cultural zeitgeist around the story was that of the dog who waits until Odysseus returns home before he dies, which I also found to be very impactful, with John Leguizamo being an important character in that subplot. I also really love how this moment clues Telemachus into the fact that Odysseus was the beggar all along. Really great reveal and really great reunion for these characters, and Tom Holland again did great as this character. Alright, who else? Himesh Patel. He was also fantastic here. Love that he's slowly been getting bigger and bigger roles in these Nolan films. Maybe he'll one day get the Cillian Murphy treatment and become the star of Nolan's next big film. He plays the right hand to Odysseus on his journey home, and of everyone besides Matt Damon, he probably gets the most screen time. My friend joked at one point during the screening that she hates the Odyssey because every single time Odysseus is acting smart, his crew is acting dumb, and every time his crew is acting smart, Odysseus is acting dumb, which is very true, and Patel bounced off of Damon very well during their scenes of contention. Benny Safdie and Lupita Nyong'o play Agamemnon and Helen / CLYTEMNESTRA respectively. The moment Benny Safdie spoke as Agamemnon was very jarring to me, as it wasn't quite the voice I was expecting from this character, but his role here is so very small, so it wasn't too distracting, and Nyong'o's rageful take on the twin character she plays very much left an impact, especially with her scream that acted as the film's most effective jump scare. And also Logan Marshall Green. I honestly didn't realize it was Logan Marshall Green until the second time I watched it, and I was like, hey, that kind of looks like Logan Marshall Green, and it was pretty good. When it comes to flaws to this film, I honestly don't have too many. For one, the sound mix with the dialogue will always be a Nolan thing at this point, but the script's dialogue alone was probably the bigger issue here. Some lines did come across a bit stilted, but that also does seem to be a larger Nolan issue as well. You get used to it pretty quickly, but you can definitely tell the difference between moments in dialogue that feel genuinely profound versus the moments where characters just state the obvious. And I do think some people are going to pin it on the fact that they are speaking in modern English rather than speaking Old English or speaking in Greek or whatever people want to complain about here, but I honestly do think that the issue is in the actual writing of the dialogue than it is with them speaking in modern English, because honestly, I had no problem with that as I was watching the film itself. And when it comes to Nolan's editing, there are definitely times you can tell that he had to cut around some parts to trim this movie down to a sub 3-hour runtime. Sometimes he just doesn't care about continuity, which I find to be so funny coming from one of the greatest directors of all time, and that just also seems to just be a Nolan thing at this point. Of all the different trials and tribulations that Odysseus has to face, the one against the Lystragonians was definitely the weakest, partly because they never really explained what in the world was going on there, and I had to look it up after I watched the movie, but even in the film's weakest sequence, I still was in awe of certain moments within that sequence, especially as the trees moved around the battlefield and men were just thrown so violently through entire trunks of trees. Very cool stuff, and honestly, I think the trees moving, some of it had to be in camera, right? Maybe the ground was CG and it was just all blended together. I don't know. It was really cool to see. But overall, I really liked Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Not quite sure where I'd put it in his rankings, but because I'm not super entrenched in the source material, I think that true diehard fans of The Odyssey will have it higher up on the rankings of his than I'd have it. But I cannot deny that it is truly a cinematic achievement. And as a filmmaker myself, it's always awe-inspiring to see a new Nolan film in theaters.
Keep us straight!
But those are just going to be my thoughts on The Odyssey. Did you enjoy the latest cinematic experience from Nolan, or are you running towards your keyboards in anger because Tom Holland said the word dad? Let me know in the comment section down below, and as always, if you did enjoy this review, make sure to leave it a like and subscribe to the channel to see more videos just like this. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.